But that is where the legality comes into play. Because an emulator itself, emulators are legal, strictly speaking. Just they don't use any intellectual property that has been stolen. They've been reverse engineered.
They're not the weed. Emulators are the bong. Which is just a piece of art that has holes in it that if you put weed in, you can smoke.
That's actually not a terrible metaphor.
YUNKJunk!
Hello, and welcome to Tubby Talk, where we'll be talking about video games, old, new, future, who knows? I'm one of the hosts, Steve Wright, and this is...
I'm Chris, as Chris McGuire. I'm the other one of the hosts today. There's no Terry today, so we're doing...
We're being formal today. We use first and last names.
Well, yes, sir. Mr. Junior.
Junior Esquire to you.
Oh, yes.
So we kind of don't have a script today. We never have a script, but today we actually have no script because we didn't think about what we were going to talk about before we started this recording. But we did have a couple of tidbits of gaming news or gaming lifestyle that we kind of wanted to touch on today.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is a good subject to talk about, and we want to talk about the idea of emulation and game preservation and piracy, because those are things that people usually equate emulation with. Maybe they're right, maybe they're wrong, and people have different attitudes on that. All right, we'll start with that right there. Here's the big question, Steve: is emulation stealing?
No.
Okay, but you are playing a game that someone else made without paying them money.
Yes.
Okay, but not stealing.
No, because to me, stealing. I'm not a legal expert, but to me, stealing more heavily involves intent and trying to like game the system, for lack of a better term, trying to get away with something that you could not do otherwise, without paying.
Okay.
So I know that's a weird explanation, but I'll explain what I mean. So. Say you have a present day console. Say back in 2001, Dreamcast is out. It's popular. PlayStation 2 is popular. It has a huge install base. You could pirate games using CD-ROM burners to make games. They'll burn games for PlayStation 2 and for not PlayStation 2 for Dreamcast.
Yeah.
No, CD-ROM burner for both.
The PS2 played DVDs, right? But yeah.
PlayStation 2 played DVDs?
Yeah.
Okay, so
PlayStation 1 was...
Never mind, forget the PlayStation. Dreamcast, 2001, to set the stage properly. Yeah, you could burn on a CD burner a image of a GD-ROM, which is what Dreamcast used for their storage media.
Yeah. And
you could play it on a Dreamcast in a few different ways. You could have a boot disk. You put the disk in first, and it boots up a loader that allows you to load the image. Or you could... I think you could mod the software of the Dreamcast to do that as well. I always did it with the boot disk route because it's very dead simple. You just downloaded a boot disk image, burned it onto a CD-ROM, and then you swap disks. So that was a present day console in 2001. To me, that's stealing because I could have bought the game instead of downloaded it when someone else bought it and uploaded it for the world to steal. And I was preventing Sega from getting any money. A lot of people did that, which is probably why the Dreamcast died as soon as it did.
It was a problem.
But yeah, like, it was hard to find a lot of Dreamcast games, especially later in its life, because it was not a popular system and it wasn't widely carried. But yeah, I would consider that stealing.
Okay.
I wouldn't consider that it is technically emulation, but I feel like that's more copying a disc.
Well, that's not emulation.
Propagating.
That's piracy.
Sorry. So yeah,
that's piracy.
No, you're right. That's not emulation.
Yeah.
Emulation is when you take you use software, correct? Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
Use software to enable the play of a game data, whether it's in a ROM or however else it's stored.
It's basically a piece of software that
emulates hardware. Yeah, it pretends to be the hardware and runs as the hardware would run as best as software can emulate on whatever system it's running on.
Yeah.
And so by the time you're emulating something, to me, in our lifetime, it's been after the viable lifetime of the product.
All right. So to you, a lot of this hinges on the fact of whether or not you can buy it at that time.
Yeah. Whether or not you can buy it, whether or not it's feasible to buy, whether or not the console is being sold and produced at the time. Like in 2001, I don't think they were making Super Nintendos at all anymore. If they were making like the small form factor ones only.
Not in 2001, I don't think.
Yeah. So if you wanted to play Super Mario World and you couldn't find a Super Nintendo, you couldn't find a cart to play in the Super Nintendo, you can't find. You could get an emulator, download the ROM, and you can play Super Mario World.
So basically, for old games, it's okay.
Yeah. And it's a sliding scale for old.
Yeah.
Because if it's currently in use, you probably don't have a good emulator. If it's currently widely, in production, that changes when you get to like the Xbox 360 days. Because I think they catch up a little bit with like the Wii U emulation.
Well, yeah,
stuff
and
like
right
that.
now you can emulate a Switch almost flawlessly.
I mean, 7 years into the Switch's lifetime, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, and you don't really need to emulate the PS5 and the Xbox Series because they're PCs, and a lot of those games are ported to PC as it is. So you just pirate the PC version.
Which is a whole different can of worms.
Yeah, well, and I feel like I used to be a big PC pirate, and that was, didn't have money back then, and it was tough to get games. So you would try to steal them, and it was kind of a pain in the butt. But then I don't know what came first. So Steam came out, and I never pirated again for a PC because like Steam came out and it made it so easy to buy games. It was very controversial when it first came out. I don't know if you remember, like it was.
Oh, when Steam first came out.
Yeah, well, you had to install Steam to play Half-Life 2. And everyone wanted to play Half-Life 2. Like, they're making us install this launcher to play the game I want.
This DRM, digital rights management, blah, blah, blah. Yeah.
And it was.
Yeah.
But it did it in a very, at least came to be, very unobtrusive way. And they made it really easy it was easier than piracy. Yeah. And that's for me what it came down to. It's like, oh, I can buy this game for $10 and I have it and forever. Okay, sure.
Also, you had money.
Oh yeah, so
by the time Steam was prevalent, you had an adult with a job and could afford
a white collar job by that point.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Is it which did you? All right, after Steam came out, did you pirate many PC games?
I didn't care for. I'm not a huge first person shooter fan, so I didn't care enough about Half-Life 2 to want. I never played Half-Life 1. Yeah. I didn't care enough about Half-Life 2 to want to download Steam and install it. So I didn't know anything about the Steam store and the other games you can buy through the storefront. So I was still pirating. What stopped me from pirating PC games is when you needed a DVD burner, which I didn't have and couldn't afford at the time. And I'm like, well, I don't want to buy this just to burn discs that might not work. And I don't have a hard drive large enough to like hold the images because I had like a 10 gig hard drive or something at that point. So I was like, I can't download the like 4.7 gig image and then run it on an emulator with Windows installed because that was like, I couldn't unpack the ROM. Basically, that was the straw that broke the camel's back. I tried to like unpack the ROM. It's like, you don't have enough space. I delete everything. You don't have no space. You got to delete Windows if you want to unpack this ROM to pirate it. And I'm like, well, I guess I can't pirate it anymore.
So it was a practical concern. You did not have the space to do it. No, but I imagine, have you pirated any PC games in the last decade?
No.
Yeah, I wouldn't think so because at this point, like the speed of the computer is a non-factor, right?
Yeah. The speed, storage space, like none of those things are as much of a factor as they were in like 2005. Yeah. But also the fact that A, I can afford to buy games. B, part of me, especially with Steam, feels guilty about the stealing I would do for PC games because they weren't being emulated. It wasn't emulation of old games. It was current games I just didn't buy. Yeah. So I kind of feel like some of the guilt of that made me use Steam and buy games more, especially on sale. Like, oh, here's $40 to get 5 games I'll play one of, and the rest of it just goes to pay my penance for all the games I stole.
A penance that you had been backlogging, so you're like, I'm just going to keep on buying these games because I was bad in the past, and now I'm making up for it in the future.
I've never bought a game that I pirated in the past. Like, I will say that much. But I'm like, I spent a bunch of money on this game that I don't play that much, but it makes up for all the thousands of hours I spent playing pirated games I didn't pay for. So I remember the only PC game I ever paid for before Steam was Max Payne. It was the first PC game I ever bought. I loved it. And then that was the only PC game I could run on my computer for a very long time.
Yeah, that one ran pretty well in lots of things. But yeah, that one I definitely pirated. I remember like going through all of the steps. You had to jump through hoops. And now I hear the hoops are even worse.
Well, because everything is always online. There's DRM that calls home.
Yeah.
The game calls home sometimes.
It's a pain, and like paying is easy if you have the money. And the thing with PC games is if you wait a month or two, it's real cheap, real fast. Like a game comes out and it's like, oh man, it's $60, it's $70. That kind of hurts. Like I know there's going to be a Steam sale, in 2 months. I'm going to get that thing for $9.99. I'm just going to, and I don't know. You get to a certain point, if you have disposable income, $9.99 is like, it's easy.
It's less than a cup of coffee for a lot of people.
It's an impulse buy, right? A $9.99 can be an impulse buy. And that's why we all have horrible backlogs in our Steam catalogs. That I've played maybe half of the games? Maybe. Probably not even that much.
Like, of the games I wanted to play for Steam that I bought, there's probably like 12 right now that I actually want to spend time playing, and I played like 2 of them.
And to me, though, a lot of it, what's cool about Steam is I own those games. Like, I know I don't technically own those games. I own some limited license,
own the license to the game as far,
yeah.
As long as Steam is around, which doesn't have any signs of going anywhere anytime soon.
Right, and it's almost like a preservationist angle because now I have this backlog that I can install at any time in and out like a library almost. Like, this is my personal library. I bring it out. I play that game. I can uninstall it, and it's kind of always there. As long as I trust that Valve will exist and that they're running Steam, that's a thing. And that's comforting, which is strange because we own nothing and none of this is physical. It's just like our account has little check marks on it. Like, yeah, he's got this one and this one, this one. We don't own it, but for some reason it's comfort. I don't know what they've done, but they've engineered an interface that makes me feel comforted. And I don't know.
Because like I get the sense that like you are a collectionist.
Yeah,
is that a word? There's somebody who like things you like and things you value. You like to collect them and have them to cherish. Like, you're not like, oh, let me look at this cart of Super Mario World I had from when I was a kid. Although I could understand doing that. Do you still have the original one from when you were a kid?
I still have the original one.
That's awesome. But
I still play it too.
I mean, of course you do. Like, I'm not gonna play it on the Switch. That's sponsored emulation. I'm gonna play it physically as it was meant to be played.
Yeah.
On this now beige colored Super Nintendo. But like, yeah. So like, I definitely like I don't need to keep a game on my hard drive to play it because I own it. I have the check mark on my account.
Yeah.
I can always bring it back at any time unless it's been delisted by the publisher. Like, I can bring it back and play it later when I have time and space. That's not something that I ever did with pirated games because I was like, oh, I'm playing this game. If I want to pirate a new game, I need to get rid of it because I don't have storage space to keep all these ROMs around.
They felt more
images around,
more disposable, right?
Especially in the DSL eras, where it's like, oh, I'm going to be downloading this game for 10 hours.
Yeah.
So I better play the heck out of this game because I spent 10 hours of internet time on it, not doing anything else. Not that you could do anything else on the internet back then.
It didn't do much.
Yeah, you weren't streaming like TV shows. It was like, yeah, you're pirating games, or you're uploading work you're doing. Like, if you weren't one of those two people, like, you didn't need a 250 megabit per second down connection. Like,
yeah. So that's all in the PC world, which is kind of more ephemeral because you're using the same machine that you're playing it on. But emulation was all about emulating the consoles, but you're playing it on a PC. And to me, just that idea was novel. Like, when I first got into it. I loved it, yeah. It was like, oh, I can play a Mario game on my computer. Like, this, it felt, a little bit wrong, but thrilling at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, like, I wasn't in college all that long, but most of my college experience was playing CPS1 games. I think you burnt me a disc with a bunch of like Street Fighter, like Capcom fighting game ROMs.
Yeah.
And I would just play those, and somebody down the hall also had those ROMs and the same emulator. I think it was a version of MAME. And so it was CPS MAME. CPS MAME was named emulator. And we actually played networked fight games against each other down the hall.
I always wonder who does that.
Yeah, I did that. Yeah,
it was kind of, there were a couple hoops to jump through to make that work. Like,
well, it helped. He was down the hall, so we just like yell like the whatever address we had to put in.
Yeah,
like the IP address. Whenever it changed, we were like, oh, my new IPs, blah 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 blah. Whitelist me, whitelist them, and then we play for another 25 minutes till it rolls over again. And we're like, here's the new one.
So yeah, back then to play online games, specifically with these emulators, which the games were not designed to be online games at all. They were basically a hack.
Yeah, and it wasn't like a server for them to connect to.
But you had to know the local IP address of the person you wanted to connect to and what port you're going to go. So you had to like, hey, friend, here's all these numbers, type them in, and maybe, just maybe, we'll be able to start a game together. Yeah. And you made it work.
Yeah, so I did that. That was lots of fun. And also just being... my roommate, his friend would come in that lived like, this was at Penn State. He was from out there, like State College, I guess. Yeah, State College.
Yeah.
His friend lived nearby, like 20 miles away. He would come to the dorm in the middle of the night, and I would wake up, and next to my bed, some guy's playing Super Metroid with like a leather jacket with spikes on it, and his head shaved bald. And I'm just like, the first time I was like, who's a skinhead in here playing next to my, oh my God. And he's like, oh, hey, how you doing? My name's blah, blah, blah. And he's the nicest guy. He just looked scary to me because
he just looked like a terrifying skinhead.
Yeah. And not to be fair, I was in Penn State.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my God, what's going on? But he's just like, I love Super Metroid, but my computer can't run the emulator. And he's just playing it. It was on SNES 9X?
Yeah, SNES 9X.
Yeah, he was playing it on that emulator. And I was just like, oh my God, like you drive 20 hours in the middle of the night to play Super Metroid.
Yeah.
I was like, this is what emulation is all about. It's about make sure people can enjoy the games they enjoy without, if they can't access it on the console they want to use, if they don't have access to the game, you can always download the emulator as long as you have internet and you know where to go.
Yeah.
And you have a little bit of storage space.
You know where to go. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Yeah, you could always find a friend with a pack of ROMs. Now it's easier than ever to grab the stuff. But that is where the legality comes into play. Because an emulator itself, emulators are legal, strictly speaking. Just they don't use any intellectual property that has been stolen. They've been reverse engineered.
They're not the weed. Emulators are the bong. Which is just a piece of art that has holes in it that if you put weed in, you can smoke.
Actually, not a terrible metaphor. Yeah, because the illegal thing is the ROMs, because the ROMs are the stolen intellectual property that was made by artists and developers and, musicians. And
although were ROMs copywritten or anything?
Yeah.
Because there are
game.
typed data, so I guess it had to be copywritten as opposed to like trademarked or patented or something.
It's illegal to copy them. Straight up. Like when you buy them, like it says you've agreed to this. The first page of every instruction book, it has this whole licensing agreement.
Those have so many holes.
Yeah. Well, so would your defense.
I mean, well, not to get into it because neither of us lawyers and we don't know what we're talking about.
No.
I know copyright only protects certain things. I think it's stuff that's written, like written instructions are not copyrightable, but these are not instructions in that sense. These are instructions for a computer to run a thing a certain way.
Software is copyright.
Yeah. Like the rules for D&D the standard rules are not copyrightable. That's why they're available for free, the SRD, because they can't copyright a list of instructions.
But the scenarios.
The scenarios, the characters, the names of the world, those are copyrightable. But being like, hey, you roll a D20 and this happens if you roll this, that's a set of instructions for a person to follow. So like a recipe is not copyrightable because it's a list of instructions to make a food product.
But for
the finished food product is you can get protection for that, I believe, but not for hey, combine milk and sugar and get a cookie.
Yeah. So the emulators themselves, though, they're kosher. Like people just openly say, we're developing this. This is my name. You can download it from my website direct. No problem. But the ROMs, because that's illegal, you need to go to somewhere a little more gray, a little more, a little more sketchy. And really, the best place now, which is surprisingly not
you want
gray,
to put this out on there?
Archive.org has everything. Archive.org.
Is that not the Internet Archive? That's separate?
It's part of it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's part of it. It's another section that has the Wayback Machine, which has archives of snapshots of web pages from various points in history, which is awesome. I use that a bunch too. But yeah, archive.org has a lot of surprising stuff that's just hosted like it was public domain. It's not public domain.
Wait, so are these hosting copies of the stolen copies of the ROM? Well, copies of copies of copies, or is it just here's links to where these ROMs can be found?
No,
and then links are archived.
Archive.org is hosting it. Yeah, that's the amazing. I don't know how that works out legally, but it's there. So just saying, yeah, archive.org. Everyone knows archive.org. It's there.
I mean, apparently I don't. I need to get in. I need to get with the times.
But yeah, so the emulators I thought were fascinating. The first time I saw Super Mario World running on a PC was pretty neat. The thing is, I want to know if you got this. So you had this guy come, he played Super Metroid on your friend's computer, your roommate's computer. Yeah. Every time I got an emulator and a pack of ROMs, I was very excited, but my attention never, I'd start a game, play for 5 minutes and be like, that was fun.
Yeah.
Start another game for 5 minutes. That was fun. And kind of never get deep, actually play through a game. Did you have that experience? Because I want to know if I'm just I see that buffet and I want a little bite of everything, but I don't actually taste it.
So I know we've talked about this before, and I don't remember if I said it on the podcast before, but famously, I never finished Super Mario Brothers 1 until I was like 20 something.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it was on an emulator.
Okay.
I was trying to remember if it was an emulator or on my DS. There was a version on DS or re-release on a cart, maybe?
There were a couple of versions you could play on the DS legitimately and otherwise.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure it was my PC. Yeah, it was definitely emulated on my PC now I think about it. So I used Nesticle?
Yeah, Nesticle.
Yeah, I used Nesticle emulator to play it. Because that's the only one I had at the time. Yeah, so yeah, that's the first time I finished it and played it all the way through was when I was 20 something. Because when I was a kid, it got traded away to a neighbor and then he moved to Canada. I got stuck with Kid Icarus. Kid Icarus. But yeah, and so that game I played all the way through on emulator. Super Mario World 2, Yoshi's Island. I've tried to play on emulator multiple times. Lose interest halfway through because there's other stuff to play.
Yeah.
I started playing on this Switch online for Super Nintendo. Only got halfway through. So now I'm starting to think it's the game's fault or my fault and not because of the emulation, the wide choice of game to play via emulator.
Well, here's do you say that we're back, you're living at home, your friend's like, hey, I got this game, Yoshi's Island, you can borrow it. And you're like, great, you borrow it, you take it home, you have 4 games at home, this is another game. Would you play it through then?
Yeah, of course.
I know I would.
Yeah, I'm like, this is a new game experience that I have to play. Yeah. The other 4 games I played them before.
Yeah.
And I want to play something new, and this is something new.
I think there's something, basically when you have too many options, they all get devalued and you don't really think about them. You don't enjoy them as much. I know I don't. Like, and you say like, oh, well, Chris is a little weird. He still has his original Mario world. I'll sit down and play it because like it's a little bit of a pain to get to. Yeah. Like you got to get it out and make sure it's hooked up to the TV. You got everything. And right now you sit down like
you don't make it too easy for yourself to enjoy it.
No, if it's too easy, I don't play it. Like I'll just pop and I know it's driven my wife crazy because I'll sit down like with like some new emulator and I'll be like, oh, 5 minutes of this, 5 minutes of that, 5 minutes of that. She's like, sit down and play something.
Well, see, like on the flip side though, like when you have a lot of games to choose from and you have that glut of like ROMs, you can pick whichever you want to play. Like if I don't know a game, I'll test it out and I'll be like, oh, I've heard of this game. I'll try it out. I might not like it too much in that little 5-minute snippet. So I'm like, okay, I'll play something else. And I'll find myself going through games, sampling them all, trying to find one that I do want to sit down and devote time to. They're usually games that I've heard a lot of acclaim about or people wax nostalgic about. But then I'll be like, I don't like the Kirby side-scrolling games. I'm like, I actually don't love these. I know Terry loves them. He talks about them a lot, but I'm like, I don't like it. Partially because it's old. I've played games that iterated on the Kirby games since then. So it kind of feels like, oh, why am I watching this black and white movie when I could watch the remake made 60 years later in color?
Yeah.
Or CGI, you know, like, there's reasons to do that. I just don't have that reason.
Yeah.
I don't have the impetus to do it. But yeah, I don't think it was too much. Just like the fact I have a wide variety to choose from, that my brain told me I have to try all of them and not stick with one. I think it's more like I picked one and I was like, I kind of don't like it. But now I'm thinking back, like I've done that so much, it might be like you said, like I just didn't value playing the experience of playing it that much because I had options.
Yeah, you have a shinier thing. I mean, it's like the game version of TikTok. It's like video, like these tiny little hits of dopamine. And the second that you start to wane, you jump to something else.
Oh, I don't know. That's a weird analogy though, because like I'll see like I don't like TikTok, but I do end up finding myself looking at Facebook reels of random stuff. There's a TikTok videos somebody put on Facebook.
Yeah,
but they're all like octopus videos, and I'm like, oh, this is interesting. I can watch 1 or 2, and then I'm like, I'm done for a week. Like I just don't have that potato chip impetus for media like that. I think that also applies to like having a lot of video games. Like I have all the video games. I can pick whichever one I want to play. I would just be like, oh, Duck Hunt 2? I never heard of that. Let me play it. Oh, what's next on the list alphabetically under Duck Hunt 2?
Well, I also
and then I play that one. Like I'm not like, yeah.
You said in the past though, when you'll have a game and you'll love it and you'll be playing it and you'll midway through and you're like, man, I really like this game. But then a new shiny game comes out.
Well, no, that's because I set a goal for myself in the current game.
Okay.
And when I set a goal for myself too strongly and I attain that goal, that was my goal for the game.
And the goal is not complete the
Yeah,
game.
the goals. Yeah, it's not often not complete the game. Like I'm playing Dragon's Dogma 2 right now, and I was like, I love this game. I've been playing it for like 80 hours, just tooling around, exploring the world, and it's like, oh, I want to go get this one class and unlock it. I unlocked it. Okay, I focused on it too much for like 20 hours of gameplay. So by the time I got there, I'm like, okay, now what?
Now you're ready for the next shiny thing.
I guess I can finish the game now. Yeah, there's other games I want to try, and I'm like, but I can't. I don't want to try those when I'm playing a game. But with emulators, I didn't have that issue, only because I didn't get that far into the game to fall off of it and lose impetus in playing it. I think it started playing it.
I don't know if that...
Like, I don't think 5 minutes is enough to start playing a game, even in the NES era.
I agree. And that's the problem, right? Like if you're... The interface lends you to want to jump around from ROM to ROM.
Well, so let me ask you, like, could you think of any reason why you would stop playing the first game after 5 minutes? Was it just to play the next one? Or is it because the current one did not engage you?
It was just to play. Well, I mean, it was just like...
I feel like if it engaged you would continue doing it. Like, you've read books you hated just because you started reading it.
Yeah.
You didn't want to stop reading it. But, you know.
Yeah, book feels like more of a commitment than like shuffling through a list of ROMs.
Gotcha.
Like a list of ROMs is like a pop that on. I want to see how it's running. Oh, it runs cool. Next game. How's that run? Oh, it runs good. Next game. Yeah. And an hour will pass and I'll be like, I didn't play anything. I played 5 minutes of like 20 things.
Well, so I guess I'll touch back on and ask you what I mentioned earlier with me. Like, sometimes I just stop playing the game because I realize I don't like it.
Yeah.
Like, could that be part of it too? Like, you're like, oh, let me try Rygar. I haven't played Rygar, or I haven't played Rygar in 20 years. And you're like, oh, Rygar kind of sucks. But you don't want to admit that to yourself because you're like, oh yeah, I remember liking this game. And a lot of people love this game, but you're playing it and you're like, it's not clicking for me. So at some level, you could be like, oh, so let me go to the next one because I don't like this one.
Yeah, that's not what's happening with me with the ROMs.
But you know it's not.
Yeah, okay. I know. It's not long enough for me to have an evaluation. I'm just like, oh, cool title screen. I'll play through most of the first level and all right, next game. And I try now consciously not to do that. And right now, like, the reason this came up at all is because the 3DS and the Wii U have shut down their eShops. They're gone forever. You can't buy things on them at all. So now, like, well, how do you get new games onto these systems? The 3DS was a huge seller. There's 100 million 3DSs out there. Well, the only way to do it is through sideloading them, homebrew, emulation. You got to hack your 3DS.
You like put it on the SD card and then pop the SD card into the console?
Yeah, there's a process, but it involves the vectors through the SD card. And there's a really good site that walks you through it called something like 3dshacks.com. Steps you through how to homebrew your system. But now a lot of people are more interested in it because, I mean, I know this happens to me. Like when someone's like, this service is shutting down, I'll be like, well, I got to play that service.
Yeah, the service you haven't used in 10 years. Yeah. And you're like, oh, now I got to go play Wii before they finish.
I hadn't played Splatoon 1 in a while because Splatoon 2 and 3 came out and I was playing those. But I was like, you know what? There's only 1 week left. I'm going to play some Splatoon 1. And I played it. I had tons of fun. I was like,
other people were playing it too?
Yeah, a bunch of people were on. Like, definitely there's a spike in traffic. And that was great. But then when it's gone, you have this empty feeling. You're like, well, I want more. Now that I was reminded of all the great things that this device can do for me.
Yeah.
So the 3DS, you know, it's kind of been languishing in our household. Like,
mine's been in a drawer in my bedroom for since before COVID. I think I started trying to play Pokemon Sun again right as COVID started, and I was like,
yeah. So when I guess my kids were born, my second kid was born right around the time the Switch was coming out. The first one was born when the Wii U was coming out. They both kind of grew up with DSs, and they played that. It was like that's the game you can have in your bedroom. Device for comfortable with you having. You can play it on non-school nights, only on non-school nights. So they played a bunch of it, but as time has gone on, they get shinier games on the Switch, shinier games on their computers, and they don't really play the DS so much. And that's just natural. That's what happens. But there's a lot more.
You sound like you're trying to convince yourself that's natural. That's what happens.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not going to be mad at these kids, but
no. I mean, I'm not mad at a kid. I'm the same way. But just now knowing, I was like, hey, Leona, they shut down the eShop. You can't buy games anymore. How would you like to hack your DS?
She was like thrilled about that.
Yeah, she was like, oh, that's cool. So she and I sat down and figured out how to hack our systems last night. We did it together, which was pretty cool. Taught her all about file systems and SD cards. And so now.
Doesn't the Nintendo use like a proprietary file system for their, they format the SD cards, right?
They did, but the 3DS actually uses a standard FAT32.
Oh, okay.
So you can read it with Windows.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Older systems, like you've had to do some crazy things. But yeah, it's just FAT32.
Oh, nice.
So Windows can read it. You can drag and drop things off of it. But now, like, we're like, oh, what can you do on this? And you don't see, here's the moralizing part. Like, in the past, I wouldn't steal ROMs for a current system. As you were saying, like, there's something about it being current and buyable.
Yeah, that makes it feel like stealing.
It makes it feel, and it is stealing.
Well, it as you kind of alluded to, and I was arguing against, it is stealing in all forms.
Yeah.
But it feels like stealing to me more when it's current.
Yeah, it feels more wrong.
Yeah.
And right now, there's no way to buy any of these games, especially not directly from the people who made it. The only way you can buy any of these games is on cartridge, like through third parties.
If they put it on cartridge. There are lots of download-only games, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, there's a fair amount. And all the DLC for anything. But there's a very nice program on the homebrew called HShop, where it has a list of every game, every DLC, and you just select it and it downloads and it installs to your home.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. So I saw a video about that. I was like, I want that. So we installed it. And
you
so
want it for your now defunct?
Right.
Well, yeah, functionally defunct system.
But it has breathed new life into this device, like that otherwise would be sitting there in the drawer. And so now we're like, oh, the DS does lots of cool stuff, and now it does more cool stuff. And in fact, like there's we were finding there's a homebrew port of like a bunch of like common games. Like they made a homebrew port of Doom and Quake, so you can play them like natively on the system. There's a Mario 64 one I haven't done yet, but like a Mario 64 port for the 3DS. Like, what's that play like? I gotta find out. That's pretty neat. Yeah.
Wait, I thought you did that officially already.
There's a PC version where they basically they got the source code for it and they made a PC port.
Oh, and then they ported that to 3DS.
I'm not sure what the direction was, but quite possibly. Yeah. But the 3DS is cool because it's powerful. Like it's still like a pretty beefy 3D system. You know, compared to modern things, it's far in the dust, but you can play great games at 60 frames per second on that little DS.
It was saying like the Switch is like 4 3DSs strapped together.
Yeah, something like that. And it's actually brought me a new appreciation for the killer feature of the 3DS, which is that 3D stereoscopic screen. And a lot of people didn't use that or they lamented it.
I used it a bit, not to play games, but about the time that came out, that was also when the Evo 3D cell phone came out, smartphone. That was my first smartphone, and I would take pictures with the phone, and they were stereoscopic. Yeah. So they would work in the 3DS. That. So I would put them on the SD card.
And you could see them in 3D there.
But it was a special folder.
Yeah.
Or I had to do some kind of conversion. So that's why I didn't know if it had a proprietary file system. Because I had to do some conversion, I guess, from the phone's file.
Yeah.
Into something readable by the 3DS. But I could look at the photos on my 3DS in 3D.
That's pretty cool.
And I'm like, this is dumb.
Yeah. Did the phone itself have a 3D screen?
The phone itself did like pure stereoscopic. Like you had to cross your eyes a little bit to see the 3D.
Oh, okay. So,
but the 3DS, like in the screen, it kind of makes it partially stereoscopic for you. Like,
yeah. It gives two different images to each eye.
Yeah. The phone was the same image to both eyes, but software offset.
Okay.
So it was like it made a stereogram out of whatever the picture was.
Dude, that was a weird phone.
Yeah, it was weird and dumb, and that's why they made a 2, I believe. But then after that, they shifted to just a normal camera because it was expensive and dumb.
Does your phone have a stereoscopic camera?
I mean, my phone has 3 lenses, I think, on the back.
So someone could probably write it to do something.
Yeah, like they're different focal lengths, but yeah, you could definitely fix it in post, as they say. But Dylan got a laugh on that one. But yeah, so.
Well, so the emulator. Yeah. So one of the first
told me about something very exciting about the.
Yeah. So one of the first things that caught my eye as I was looking at the apps available on this new 3DS hacked is that there's a Virtual Boy emulator. A Virtual Boy emulator. That's not a system that you see much. Like there were only 16 games released for the whole thing. No one had one. I had one because they were selling them for $50.
Yeah, you got one after the fact, right?
Yeah, way after fact. They were selling them for $50.
When it came out, somebody in our middle school had one, and he would try to play it under his desk.
Yeah.
In like math class.
But I got one for $50, and then they were selling the games.
Mind you, it's a headset.
That's a headset.
He would put his head in his desk with his bag on top, and he was sticking his head in the headset.
No, he put it in the school
In the
bag and put his head in the bag to play the game. And he was pretending he was asleep. And the teacher was just like, well, he's usually asleep, so whatever.
It was great.
But so the cartridges, though, I bought for super cheap because they were fire sailing them at Blockbuster. Well, I got a lot of used games at Blockbuster because they rented them and then they had to make room. And so
they went out of business.
Went out of business. So yeah, you just buy them. And I actually found a couple dumpster diving. The dumpster behind Blockbuster, man, here's a pro tip. For 20 years ago, go to that dumpster. It has DVDs and games in it.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, you climb in there.
They just took them and chucked them in there wholesale, just like...
No pride. You get free games, man.
Get out of here, Gross Point Blank.
Yeah, exactly. So I saw this and I was like, oh, that's awesome because the 3DS has a stereoscopic display. So you can actually play these 3DS games the way they're meant to be played.
Yeah, because the Virtual Boy had 2 screens, right?
Yeah, it had 2 eyes. So yeah, it had 2 different displays. The way it worked was wacky too. They were shot at a 90-degree angle into a mirror, and the mirror oscillated rapidly to actually display. It was almost like a CRT with a mirror. It was really weird.
Seems really over-engineered for what they're trying to do.
It was at the cheapest way they could do it.
Okay.
It was, relatively cheap back
Well, yeah,
then.
'cause I guess 2 displays would cost a lot.
Yeah. So I installed that. And it's awesome. Man, you guys got to play this. If you haven't played Virtual Boy on a 3DS, you have not lived.
I got to get this whole thing set up.
Yeah.
Do you know if you can change the color schemes?
You can choose any color.
Oh, that's awesome.
It gives you, like I saw one of the first things, video settings, it gives you a color wheel. You get to choose what color.
Nice. Yeah, because I was like, I want to play it with like a baby blue grid instead of like the red grid, maybe. See how that looks.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm keeping it on like the standard red right now.
Can you change the background too? Can you make it like?
I don't know if you change the background.
You make it black and white.
You wouldn't be able to see anything.
Black and white.
It would look weird. Everything would look negative, right?
Well, yeah, but that's the thing. Like the Virtual Boy already looks negative because it's red on black.
Yeah.
So if you changed it to black on white, it would, or grayscale on pea soup, whatever the Green Boy color screen was.
Yeah. But it looks great. It plays great. I started playing through Virtual Boy Wario Land, which is a lot of people's like one of the high rated Wario Lands that no one's ever played.
I know, that's always what I wanted a Virtual Boy for.
Yeah.
I saw that. I was like, oh my God, I love Wario Land. I want to play this so much and never got a chance to try it.
It's a surprisingly beautiful game. Like I'm going through it and I'm like, they really made use of the system.
Nice.
Because everything's an inky black in the background. So a lot of the graphics just kind of fade into that black. So the game takes place in a cave, which is
nice,
very appropriate. Yeah, so it makes sense that everything goes to the inky black, and there's a foreground and background in a lot of places. So Mario jumps between the two, and with the stereoscopic 3D, it works.
Nice.
Yeah. So everyone's sleeping on Virtual Boy Wario Land. That's another great game that no one's ever going to play.
I mean, they can play it now if they emulate it on their 3DS.
Yeah, and everyone's got a lot of people have a 3DS or a 2DS. This works on a 2DS as well. You just won't get that stereoscopic display.
And it's really hard to steal something that's not available for 20 years.
Right. And this is something I felt
30 years.
I felt double okay about this one because not only is the 3DS effectively dead now, the Virtual Boy was deader than a doornail months after it came out. Like no one's making money off Virtual Boy. So I was like, all right, this is cool. You're bringing back this weird dead technology and making it so it's much more accessible.
Awesome.
Yeah. So I got other recommendations. You want to play some Virtual Boy games, man? Try out Galactic Pinball. That was one of my favorites. The critics didn't like that one. They're stupid. They're wrong. Galactic Pinball, my favorite pinball game, maybe of all time.
Yeah, a 3D pinball game would be really cool.
Yeah.
Like a depth-wise 3D. Yeah.
It was cool, and it had great music. It has 4 tables on it, and when you turn on the game, you boot it up, it goes, "Welcome to Space World, let's go." Which I thought was so stupid and cheesy and awesome. Like sometimes I wake up in the morning, I go, "Welcome to Space World, let's go."
That's awesome.
Yeah.
If no one else tells you that, I'm proud of it. That's great.
You. There's another one, Jack Brothers. Jack Brothers is one that sells for a high price because they didn't make a whole lot of them. But it's made by Atlas, which is now famous for things like Persona.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's taking basically the mascot characters, Jack Frost, and putting them into a top-down like action game.
Like the Jack Frost that's in like Persona, like the little snowman with the hat.
Yeah, the little snowman with the dot eyes. Yeah, you're playing as him.
That explains why he's in those games. Because I was like, you have a bunch of demons, and then you have a little snowman. And I was like, why is this snowman one of the demons you can summon in this game? Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, so there's 3 playable characters in it. Jack Frost is obvious. There's Jack Lantern. That makes sense too. He's a pumpkin head guy.
Yeah.
Shoots fire. The other one is Jack Skeleton. Now he's supposed to be Jack the Ripper.
Oh, okay.
Which makes a lot more sense, but I don't know. They're like too soon.
So he's not Jack Skellington.
No, he's just a skeleton who has a trench coat and a knife, right? He's Jack the Ripper. And he's the only one with like a melee attack. Everyone else shoots.
Mm-hmm.
But it's the most powerful. Of course, it's the melee. So I gotta be Jack the Ripper. Jack Skeleton. I want to know, like, who's gonna get mad at Jack the Ripper? They're gonna be like, that is too violent in your Virtual Boy game, Atlas.
I mean, it could be like your parent. Then parents are like, "Who's Jack the Ripper?" And they have to tell their children that he was a guy they haven't caught. They still don't know who he is, and he killed a bunch of prostitutes. Like,
he could still be out there today.
I could understand the marketing department being like, maybe you don't want parents having to explain to their kids who Jack the Ripper was.
Yeah,
like that'd be like making Ted Bundy a character in the thing. Like, maybe you could change the name a little bit, just make it Jack Skeleton.
I agree, but Ted Bundy's a little more modern. I feel like it's old enough now that you can make jokes about Jack.
Well, I couldn't think of any other older serial killers because he was Jack the Ripper's first serial killer, arguably. So.
Yeah. But yeah, that's a good game. That's one that you can play on PC. Like there are PC emulators for this, but like on the 3DS is just right.
Are there PC emulators that emulate older PCs?
There are. In fact, I've talked about the Mister before on here. I think the Mister is the perfect thing for that.
So it could do like a i186 chip interface or something.
Yeah, and it does perfect hardware emulation of things like the Apple I, the Apple II,
nice,
the Commodore 64, the Amiga, all of them old systems. Yeah, I was booting up a Tandy because I grew up with a Tandy computer, and I was like, it's just like I remember.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So you can use old computers, and they work great, and you can even hook up like a hard drive and like peripherals.
Oh wow,
and it works just like
because it's hardware perfect. It's not even emulating the hardware, so it thinks as long as you have a serial port, you can plug in all those printers.
Yeah, and those things really, I don't know how much use. Like an old game, I would argue, like it's still fun. Like you play that game, an old computer, it's all nostalgia.
I mean, there's games that weren't ported to later chipsets, even.
Yeah. But I'm talking about like for most people use a PC for productivity.
Yeah.
You're probably never going to go back to your Tandy to do word processing. Like, I mean, there's no benefit.
I would go back to like, I loved Windows ME. I don't know why I liked it. Not Windows ME. Yeah. No, Windows 2000.
Yeah.
The enterprise version of Windows ME. Yeah, I love that for some reason, that whole OS. I don't think it runs on modern systems because I think there's a chipset change after that.
Yeah,
like architecture design, right?
X64.
It didn't work for 64-bit systems. The original version didn't. I think they might have released one that did.
I forget where the Switch was made.
But somewhere around then.
There's definitely a place.
I think it's around 7 is when they did the Switch.
Actually, I think 2000 and on is all 64-bit compatible.
I know. I had no hope of owning a 64-bit compatible system. I know when 2000 was around.
Yeah.
But
anyway, you'd like to go back to use that machine.
I would kind of like to use that just for fun.
Yeah.
Like, and I played like Jedi Knight on there, and the ported Jedi Knight to stuff. It's on Steam. If I wanted to emulate it, though, I could find a ROM and go get an old emulate or Mister Windows 2000. I could play it on there.
Well, here's a tip that you might be interested in that developers mostly use. Like software developers use these things called virtual machines. And a virtual machine is essentially an emulator for a computer.
Oh, okay.
But you can make these are free too. You get a virtual machine. The one I like to use is Oracle. What's it called? VirtualBox. And you can just say, make me an image of Windows 2000 with a processor like this and RAM like this. And it makes it. And then you can run it in a window and then full screen it. And so you can run Windows 2000 at home right now if you use a virtual machine.
Oh.
And it runs great. It kind of lives on its own little ISO, like on your disk.
Oh,
so
nice.
It's good. Try it. Yeah. You want to go back to some old stuff? Get a virtual machine, guys. Developers, we're sleeping on some of these tools that the developers get to use.
Just make virtual machines of old consoles. I guess it wouldn't solve the problem. The problem isn't the emulator because it was illegal. The problem is the ROMs.
Yeah. And I'm not sure exactly how they get around because, like, obviously Windows is licensed. Like, that is not something you can copy, but you can just grab the images officially from them. I don't know how it works legally.
Maybe they just don't care because it's still obsolete.
That might be the case. They're like, no one cares about Windows 95. I don't care if you make an image of Windows 95.
Every person who images Windows 95 is a possible employee for them or something, because that means they're geeky enough about Microsoft stuff that maybe they want to work for Microsoft today. I don't know.
Yeah.
I can see that being a thing. Like, there's no downside. The upside is we might get 1 or 2 people that are interested in working here or just love our stuff so much they'll buy it forever, and we'll know because they want to mess around with 95. They must. Nobody loves Windows 11. No, nothing but bad things about it.
I have yet to install it on any machine. It came with like the newest laptop I got, but everything else I'm like keeping on 10. And they're like, "Do you want to upgrade? It's free." And I'm like, who am I versus? What are you offering me?
You don't have any competition, Microsoft. Like, what are you trying to?
They don't even advertise it with features. They're just like, it's a higher number.
No, what it told me was I could connect my phone to my computer. I could already do that now.
Yeah.
It bugs me too every time. It's like, hey, do you want to connect your phone via Bluetooth? Like, no,
I don't. These two things should not talk.
I don't want them. There's no kind of reasons I didn't to talk about.
Yeah. If you want super inside baseball at Tubby, though, we actually run our point of sale system off a virtual machine. We have a computer that is bare metal running Windows that has a virtual machine of Linux on it, and that runs all of our software. And it's just easier that way because you can clone that virtual machine and pop it on anything and it'll run identically. So if anything bad happens to that machine, problem.
They're not machine locked.
Yeah. Virtual machines, they're free. Download them, play with them.
And they're virtual, so it's cool and futuristic.
Yes. You jack into the mainframe.
With your Virtual Boy.
Yes. Now I want to see somebody use the Virtual Boy as a display for like a modern OS.
I want to see somebody use the Virtual Boy as the display with the original vector graphics of red and black for the new Apple stupid thing they came out with.
Oh, yeah. The
AR
Pro,
headset.
The Vision Pro.
Yeah. Just take the Vision Pro and just theme the whole thing to look like a Virtual Boy.
Yeah.
Maybe I'd be interested in trying it because I'm not going to buy it otherwise. So.
There might be. I wonder, like, I know there's a lot of like development on VR right now, and a lot of it's indie development. Somebody must have made a Virtual Boy emulator for
a VR headset,
like the Quest or something. The thing is, the Quest is locked down. It's crazy now, unless you sideload it. The future is terrible in some ways. If you Facebook owns Oculus, which makes the Quest, which is currently the most popular VR headset. Which means you need a Facebook account to do anything on it. And it means you have to go through their store to install anything on it. I miss computers that you could just put stuff on. That was the coolest part of having a computer.
Yeah. It drove a whole industry of discs and increasing capacities.
Yeah.
And went from magnetic to optical. And then just kind of died because they're like, oh, no, you just have to sign into a thing and check off a bunch of boxes in an account and then also pay us money. Because since you're signing in, you might as well put a credit card in there.
Yeah. And it used to be like they did that because they were able to do that because people were like, well, I want convenience. I don't want to have to deal with installation stuff. They're like, sure, we'll take care of it for you. But now it's so you need so many accounts logged in with so many multi-factor authentications. It's like just getting anywhere is a pain in the neck. I'm like, the convenience element, it's out. And that's what. Have you ever seen like a person, our parents' generation, try to put a streaming app on a television?
I've heard stories, but I haven't seen it myself, thankfully.
It's a mess. It's a mess. Future is bad. And so that's why you got to use this homebrew stuff. The homebrew stuff, like you have to learn a little more.
But it's so satisfying.
It's so satisfying. Yeah. I wish like the smart TVs let you do that sort of thing. I'm sure there are people who are hacking smart TVs.
I mean, older smart TVs, I know you can definitely. Like the one I have, I'm pretty sure you can because it's like 8 years old. I don't know about any smarter than that because they might be too smart. They're smart enough to not let you hack it.
What's annoying about the smart TVs is that they stop supporting them like 5 years later. And they're just like, oh, this thing you got 5 years ago, you can't watch Netflix on it anymore. We stopped updating that. It's like, well, now I have this e-waste.
Well,
it's trash.
I don't know about mine. I'm not sure what's going on, but it keeps trying to get me to update the OS.
Yeah.
It could be an update from 5 years ago, and I keep denying it. So it's just sitting in there waiting to be installed.
But you don't trust the update.
Yeah, no. Also, it pops up when I'm watching TV, and I'm like, I'm watching you. I don't want you to be better at computer stuff because I'm watching you as a TV.
I mean, that's why, like, I want my display to be my display and my computer to be my computer, right?
Yeah.
So, like, I love you got the Amazon Fire Stick, and that's what's driving the TV. That's great.
Yeah.
Like, all right, you need another one? You throw it away, you get another one.
Yeah, it's $35.
It's a tiny little piece.
Yeah.
It's not the whole dang TV.
And then they're like, buy Amazon Fire TV. And it's like, then the stick's in the TV. So if I need a new stick, I got to buy a new TV. Because now you got 5K or whatever. That would just sound like old men yelling at clouds.
Well, yeah, but this is the stuff that drives you to piracy.
Yeah. And again, I'm not being negative. I think it's great we sound like old men yelling at clouds because we get to be old men.
Yeah. But no, that is what drives you to piracy, right? You when things are a pain in the butt, you're like, I'm just gonna.
I mean, it's what drove the pirates to piracy. It's really convenient sailing around for months at a time, just get anywhere, and then get taxed when you get to port. You can just rob the people going places, so you never have to port.
Yeah,
you never have to pay anything to go to port. You go to a free port. This is why so many places are called free port because they're literally free ports where you weren't tariffed and taxed.
Nice.
And otherwise, you can just be like, hey, I'm a pirate. I'm gonna take what I need. I can't get limes anymore because I don't go to lands. So I steal them from you so I don't get scurvy. Sucks for you if you get scurvy.
I like the idea that pirates just go around stealing all the limes they can find. It's their one true resource. I need limes.
I mean, that and gold.
Yeah. You got to eat gold.
I mean, you need the limes to digest the gold. It's simple science.
Yeah.
But yeah, just to bring it back to piracy, man, people need to find a way to make homebrew OSs. I'm sure they have for smart TVs.
Yeah.
And I need to get one installed on my TV because I think that'll be, and I can get it to play Virtual Boy.
Yeah. And this is something.
It could do stereoscopic on a LCD LED TV, right?
I mean, not.
You would have.
Really? You need a 3D TV, really.
Really? Because you should be able to split the resolution.
Yeah.
And then you have each half like move a couple pixels left and right.
It's not going to work. No, it's not going to work. It would be cool.
I guess that's the technology they use for the 3D TVs to make those display 3D.
But I agree. And I think if it's not there must, you need an open source operating system for these smart TVs. I want Linux ported to these TVs, like a special fork made just to run the television.
Well, I know a lot of them early on ran a customized version of Android. Like I'm pretty sure mine does.
Yeah.
Or Samsung one does. And then later Google started making Android TVs for like a year. Like they do everything they did for a year. So you'll almost certainly get Linux to work on those because Android is a Linux fork, from what I understand, or based on a Linux fork or something like that. Or Unix fork?
I'm not entirely sure. I know it was originally written in Java, and I don't know where it's gone since then. And then I was like, I hate smartphones. I'm never going to pay attention to them.
At some point earlier on, they changed to a Unix branch.
Okay.
I don't know if it was all the way down at Unix, if it was close up towards Linux, but something UX was after Java. Right. They started with Java and they started doing Java on top of Unix.
Okay.
And then I think they switched to just straight like Linux at some point.
Just things that are more open. And the reason they're not open now is that you make more money with a closed wall system and you keep everyone in your system. I mean, that's Apple's MO. And it's one of the reasons I dislike Apple. Like I do think they make very good products oftentimes, but
well, yeah, they make them very good because they plan to make them obsolete in 2 to 3 years.
I hate the idea that like, well, if you get an Apple anything for it to work, you need Apple everything. Like, well, you can't. See you, Mario.
Apple's coming after us.
They're like, what? The walled garden cannot be penetrated. But yeah, you need to use the App Store to install things. And before it was iTunes, or it was up until a couple of years ago, you need to use iTunes, which is ostensibly a music playing tool, to install software on your PC.
That's why Ayana couldn't replace her laptop her iPhone when it died, because you had to flash it on your laptop through iTunes. Her laptop needed to be updated to a newer Mac OS to update iTunes to be able to flash the phone.
Yeah.
So she had to get rid of the phone and the computer. We were just like, she's like, no more Apple stuff after this.
And then, of course, Android is just kind of copying them years later. It's still the Google Play Store you got to go to install stuff. Why is it called Google Play?
Because it was called
It's a dumb name.
Google Play is a dumb name. It was just like, here's where you play video. And then they started selling stuff and they never changed the name.
Yeah. Like iTunes.
No, it was Google Marketplace for like a little bit or something like that. Google Market, and then they went back to Play. I don't know why.
The marketplace of ideas.
Nobody buys videos on Google Play.
Yeah, I wonder how many ever. Like, hundreds, maybe a couple hundred,
maybe
ever.
hundreds. I did it once because I was like, I'm not paying Amazon to rent this movie. I can rent it off of Google Play for like $2. I had to cast it to my Chromecast connected to my TV and control it from my phone to watch the movie. And I was like, never again, because this is the most annoying thing I've ever done.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the more people get used to basically running their systems, get better at understanding what's going on under the hood, the more control you have and the more you can bypass that stuff and really see another way. Like, it doesn't have to be that way.
At the very least, you can see when you're getting scammed.
Right.
And when you're opening yourself up to getting hacked or getting exploited. Like, that you have some idea of how it works because you're allowed to see how it works.
Yeah.
I guess that's why open source software works, right? Because people can independently audit it and be like, oh, this is a backdoor. This is some kind of malicious thing. Because I always wonder, like, when that open up for more malicious intent, but you need a lot of bad actors overriding all the good actors, I guess.
Well, yeah, the thing is, it's out there and like people write it so that, oh, we don't see any holes in it. Great. And like maybe it's more possible people to see holes, but you also have more people watching it. So it's kind of a give and take.
Yeah, because to me, I was like, as an end user, I still don't know how it's running. So it doesn't matter to me if it's open source because it could be malware straight up. I wouldn't know. But I assume other people knew. And that's why I came to understand is, other people know what's good or not.
Enterprise stuff is a lot of it is open source. Like most websites in the world are run with open source software. You don't see it a whole lot with consumer tech. But enterprise tech, like they're running Linux on almost all those machines.
So you could emulate those machines in the future when we're using a different type of interface or storage media. You could emulate those because they're open source and emulate them for free. Like you get the Linux to run on an emulator as much as you want because Linux is free.
Yeah.
A lot of it.
Well, but what we're saying is also if it's obsolete, we're going to emulate it anyway.
Yeah. Because how else are you supposed to get the cool old stuff that you remember or that you like?
Man, I really liked my prompt, my white on black prompt. Like I liked it back in 1996, so I want that back. It's the same prompt, the same Unix, but
it had less pixels though. It seemed like it had more character when it was 64 by 64. No, it's a 256 square screen.
Yeah, like the
CRT.
The old ones. Yeah. They look good.
The glow and the burn in.
You go back, it's hard. We'll figure this out. As we embark on this quest, we're going to be getting some arcade machines that we hope to bring a lot of that feeling to. And we're not exactly sure where on that scale of nostalgia versus, I guess, ease of use that we want to fall.
I mean, it's for a lot of the machines, we'll be able to adjust it whenever we want.
Yeah.
So we don't have, so we can go for what we feel like at the time. Be like, oh, we want everything to be retro this week. So everything's going to have CRT bleed.
Yeah. I love the CRT bleed. Like you see those displays have character. And I love whenever I go to a place, something that happens to have like an old CRT sitting in this corner, I'm like, man, they don't make them like this anymore. And it's got that warm glow of radiation.
You got that box on the UI and then some of the boxes like coming off the side from the bleed. I love that. I'm just like, that looks like it looks like somebody made it by hand. They didn't, but it looks like they made this image by hand on the screen.
It's funny. The older I get, the more nostalgia I feel for dumb stuff. And stuff that isn't even that old, like 10 years ago. So, now you put on closed captioning on a TV, it's got these, this nice white on black font box. It used to be a standard font that was on every television that looked like a computer. Computer is saying the closed caption now. And it was all in caps.
Yeah.
And it was, you go back and you see an old TV that's running that. I'm like, oh man, yeah, that's a feeling. 10 years old.
So, fun fact, those were people.
The closed caption.
Even at 10 years before 10, those are people
who are
I never really internalized it, especially when I was a kid. I think somebody told me once. I was like, that can't be. People just sitting there typing what was in the script. If it's scripted, if it's live, they're typing what was just said.
Yeah,
like stenographers just typing away real quick as you're watching it. Like that gave me much higher appreciation for subtitles.
No,
for closed captioning.
Yeah, closed captioning is actually kind of neat, and you think. I've seen live, you watch it live, it comes slower because somebody has to catch up. But every once in a while, you see someone correct something they put in. Like they go back.
Backspace, go back.
Love watching closed caption corrections. It's great. There's a human being. At least there was. Maybe now it's AI.
Yeah, then I'm thinking like 10 years ago, there might just have been like a text-to-speech thing. And they're just like, it's going to be wrong sometimes. We don't care.
They're definitely not doing it on YouTube now because they do the auto closed caption and then some robot's doing it. And they're like, oh, right now, some robot is going to be transcribing everything we say. And every 8th word will be a little wrong.
I mean, the only time I like YouTube caption, like auto generation, is when I'm watching videos like in Japanese. And sometimes it will translate it into English. And I don't understand how that works. It'll try, I should say, to translate it correctly into English. And I'll get a line every couple lines of spoken dialogue. And it'll be like tree. And they didn't say tree. But it'll be like tree, dog. And it's like, that's not what they said. But it's trying to translate it to English because that's not what it sounded like they said in Japanese. Like, they're just like, I think they said the Japanese word for tree.
Yeah, to be clear,
like, who allowed that out at the unfinished state? I don't understand that purpose.
I don't think there's anything wrong with like the auto close, like the fact that YouTube closed captions everything automatically is really neat, and it's more right than it has any right to be. Like, it's usually pretty
because they've
close.
been listening to everybody's conversation on the phone for the last 10 years.
They have the biggest store of media that the world has ever known, and it grows by thousands of hours every minute. It's disgusting. Running that, it's the biggest technical challenge probably humankind has ever taken on, and good work, guys. I guess that's why they're trying to monetize everyone and demonetize, and yeah.
So I have a parting question for you. I don't know if you're ready to wrap up yet.
Yeah. No, now's the time.
It's a question for you as well. Feel free to answer in the comments or come to the shop, talk to us about it. Do you believe that the universe is an emulation? Good night, everyone. Good night and good luck.
YUNKJunk!